This is CBC Here and Now.
Schools will return to full attendance instead of blended learning. Cohorts and physical distancing of 2 meters are not required.
The province's back-to-school plan was unveiled here in Kings Point this morning, and it could mean the end of mask wearing in schools. I'm Garrett Berry, and I'll bring you that story coming up on Here and Now.
Heat and humidity is closing in, and it'll be here through the weekend.
In just a few weeks, schools like this will be full of kids again, but smaller classes and mandatory masks will be a thing of the past.
Recommending it but not making a requirement is really not going to serve any benefit.
Not everyone's happy with government's back-to-school plan. That story just ahead.
Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes, and that's our top story tonight, the province's back-to-school plan for September. The strategy was unveiled today. It's a flexible plan that anticipates multiple scenarios ranging in risk. And as Here and Now's Garrett Berry reports, it teases the possibility of a normal school year.
How things have changed.
The low-risk approach represents a scaling back of public health measures that were in place last year.
Today, a plan that looks a lot like the old normal.
We must take this opportunity and not take it for granted.
If cases of COVID-19 stay low in the province, students will go back to school under the low-risk scenario. That means cohorting and 2-meter physical distancing will not be required, and neither will your mask. Buses will be full, sports will return, and field trips are a go. A world of difference compared to the strict COVID protocols brought in during the pandemic.
We wouldn't be, going down this path if we were in a different risk assessment space. So like, for example, the space in Louisiana or somewhere else. We're not there, though. The Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have stepped up. They've abided by the measures. They've done their part. They're getting the vaccines, and that's what allows us to be in a low-risk scenario right now.
Vaccines, they say, make the difference.
Vaccination is key, as the Premier has pointed out. So we encourage anybody who hasn't yet been vaccinated to get vaccinated.
But still, government is not making vaccines mandatory for teachers.
We have some of the highest rates of vaccines anyway in the country, and we've shown that with influenza and others, H1N1. So we're quite confident that we'll reach the necessary levels, and then we'll do a deep dive and see if there are demographics or particular areas that may require a certain nudge.
Today's news as the Delta variant drives cases across the country.
Parents and students can be reassured that through public health, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and our back-to-school plan, that health and safety is first and foremost.
And if those cases come here, the high-risk scenario for schools could see masks and online learning return. Garrett Berry, CBC News, Kings Point.
So those are the details, but how is the back-to-school plan going over with parents, teachers, and politicians? Here Now's Henrika Wilhelm has been gauging the reaction, and as you're about to hear, there are plenty of red flags.
I don't see the plan as a plan, really. To me, it's more of a huge leap of faith that the pandemic is over and that things will now continue on as they did in 2019. And that relies, from an outsider point of view, it seems to rely almost entirely on vaccination protecting us, and without even really requiring vaccination in education settings.
Back to school in September, in person. Government's plan contains many suggestions rather than rules, like encouraging mask wearing instead of making it mandatory.
No masks on buses, no masks in schools. That gives me some concern. I think people get concerned because it seems a bit rushed.
One major concern is the issue of air quality.
Some schools in my district, and I'm throughout the province, I'm sure, last year I had 35 children. The windows weren't working in the classrooms at Frank Roberts, for argument's sake. A little on ventilation. That school's a very old school. It was my high school, so it goes back, that's the whole school. So winter coming on, so you're going to put them, think about this, you're really boxing it in. You're putting 30 odd children in a small room with windows don't work, with no ventilation, and no masks,
The Teachers Association says it will be hard to curb crowding and encourage students to wear masks.
As you remove the expectation that the masks are no longer needed, it's just setting it up such that if there is a risk for some of these new variants to come in, that the door is open. And the big question is, what's the cost of normalcy? We all want normalcy. Could we still achieve normalcy in November after we had a couple months under our belts? I would argue yes.
Langdon fears the burden will fall on teachers.
They're going to have to take it and try and make sure that the expectations are followed. And that is an expectation that we have some concern with, because how this plays itself out and is implemented is not exactly clear-cut yet.
Langdon says the vaccination rate seems high among teachers, but one St. John's parent says that's not strict enough. She wants vaccines to be mandatory and doesn't think children should be the ones deciding if they mask up.
So my biggest fear as a parent of a high school student is that if they do, just say there are 20 or 30% of kids in high school that are not vaccinated. So in a school like Holy Heart, that's 300 kids. You can still have a big outbreak. So are all the kids then going to have to go home and learn online?
What everyone seems to agree on, back to school should be safe for students and teachers. But the debate continues over just what health measures should be dropped. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
The NLTA isn't alone in its concerns about air quality and proper ventilation. NDP MHA Jim Dinh, who is the former president of the NLTA, says government should have a stronger plan in place now.
Masking is still strongly recommended if you cannot, two things, if you do not know, if physical distancing is not possible, and if you do not know the vaccination status of the people next to you. That's the school system. That is the school system. So what's the plan to help deal with those who choose not to get vaccinated, for those who are immunocompromised? What is the plan there in terms of making sure that they get an education that people's health is protected? Other than arrows on the floor, or we're going to break up crowds in the hallway, or we're going to get you more screens so you can open windows. I'm sorry, the only word I can use it is such a lame response to a serious situation.
Well, if you take a look at the webcam today in Corner Brook, an absolutely gorgeous day. 28 degrees is what it is right now. But we did see temperatures this afternoon along the west coast upwards of 30 for Corner Brook. Some areas saw that. And then up across Labrador as well. Makkovik hit the 30-degree mark, 28 degrees in Cartwright. And if you factor in that humidex, it's feeling more like 34 in Makkovik. Same thing for Corner Brook, and 32 is what it's feeling like in Lab City right now. If we take a look at the heat warnings now, they have expanded to include Corner Brook as well as Gross Mourne. Same thing for the Green Bay, White Bay area. And if we take a look at the humidex values through the Maritime provinces and even a little bit further west, we're seeing that heat and humidity, and that is up the pipe for us, or up the way for us. We're going to see that over the next couple of days as we get to the weekend. So if you like it, you're going to like this forecast. I'll get into all those details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, some election news now. Sources tell CBC News that the Prime Minister will ask Parliament to be dissolved on Sunday, triggering an election campaign that's expected to last 36 days, meaning Canadians would head to the polls on Monday, September 20th. Well, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is no doubt anxiously awaiting the election call. He was in St. John's today pushing his party's election platform. He was also shoring up support for a new NDP candidate in the only riding the party holds in this province. Here now's Mark Quinn reports.
Beautiful Kitty-Vitty Gut is where federal leader Jagmeet Singh unofficially launched the NDP's campaign. It's not his first visit to St. John's. He spent a good part of his youth here in Newfoundland.
I would say the biggest part of my childhood, I lived right across the street from Bowring Park, which there is some debate in my household if it was called Boring Park or Bowring Park. Still a debate out there. I don't think it should be called boring because it was one of the most fun parks I've ever been to.
But that's not what brought him back. A federal election is coming. Singh says the party doesn't want a campaign, but the NDP was forced to get ready for one.
If Justin Trudeau was listening to people and their concerns and their worries, he would not be holding a selfish summer election.
This crew right here is the smell of success.
Singh did acknowledge the importance of oil to Newfoundland and Labrador, but he said the NDP wants to move the country away from its dependence on fossil fuels and help oil workers find new jobs.
We need to invest in renewable energy. We know that there's a direction that the world is headed. The global markets are headed, and we also know there's a reality of the climate crisis. This means we have to be serious about a plan to create good jobs that are here for the long term and that create good opportunities for work.
The NDP supports a federal rate mitigation plan for Newfoundland, but Singh says it doesn't like how Labrador's Innu Nation was left out of negotiations.
It's again another example of this Liberal government saying that Indigenous people are the most important relationship, but then completely failing to have any sort of work with, consultations with Indigenous people. So that's a major concern.
This man's decision to retire from politics may have influenced the NDP's decision to visit here today. Jack Harris won the federal riding of St. John's East in 2019, but lost to the Liberals in the election before that. The NDP says it's confident it's found someone who can keep the riding orange.
I'm very proud to introduce Mary Shortall, who will be the next Member of Parliament for St. John's East.
Jack Harris said he'd be happy to keep serving as an MP for 2 more years, but there are persistent signals that a federal election is coming soon. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the country's top doctor says Canada is in the middle of a 4th wave of COVID infections. And with that in mind, how safe does a cross-country campaign sound? Dr. Teresa Tan says public health officials and Elections Canada are prepared.
Whether it's the social distancing and mask wearing and all of those measures that everyone's pretty used to by now, but you do have to watch the local epidemiology and the local public health advice as well. So that could vary over time. And I believe that Elections Canada has other provisions such as mail-in, which is also a good idea, on top of safe practices at physical locations.
After 17 long months, the ferry between Newfoundland and St. Pierre-Miquelon is once again running. Travelers from this province can now visit the French territory and vice versa, but it isn't all about tourism. Many families have been separated from their loved ones during this time cut off due to COVID. Our Radio Canada colleagues were in fortune to catch yesterday's first crossing.
It's very exciting. We're seeing people come out through these doors and reunite with their family. Everybody seems very excited. You can kind of feel in the air, people are really happy. It's a good feeling. I think people are really relieved and excited to be able to cross the border again.
We're going to St. Pierre, first time in 18 months. So it's very exciting. It's an incredible feeling of connection, reconnection. We saw men at the loading dock. They knew us, we spoke, they were excited that we were coming, those kinds of things. And the captain on the boat today is a friend of our daughter and her husband. So, these things are extremely special.
We are very happy. The only way to get out for most of the people, because not everybody got the chance to go take the plane and go to France. And people here, lots of people got houses, family, no fog. You can see Newfoundland very close, so you can touch it sometime, but we were not allowed to come. That was hard, very hard.
Feel great, yeah. We arrived on Monday and without doing a quarantine, so that's good, very good for us to be able to come over here now. Hard waiting all those months. It's been since November 2019. I haven't been here, and a lot of Frenchmen hadn't been here since end of 2019. So be able to come here at the end of summer 2021 feels very good.
So the ferry's been suspended since March 2020, so this is the first time it's been back since then. So it's been very difficult, especially on the Burin Peninsula, I mean for the whole province and the whole region, but it's really felt very strongly here on the Burin Peninsula where this is the gateway to St. Pierre-Miquelon and they're very used to having that flow of tourists. And so same thing in St. Pierre-Miquelon, we've been told by our colleagues over there that it's been a pretty difficult time, especially for tourism business operators. So it's been pretty quiet over there. So I think people are eager to kind of start getting back to a new normal. In St. Pierre-Miquelon, I'm very excited to get back there. I used to go every month before the pandemic, so I'm very excited to get back and sort of see this, you know, it's a beautiful place and a beautiful culture, so I'm really looking forward to going back myself, but also seeing visitors go back over there and discovering it for themselves. And yeah, I'm just really, you know, looking forward to the free flow of traffic between our two territories again, and sort of sharing with each other once again, you know, like we've always done through history. So really looking forward to that.
Well, if you're in the downtown St. John's area and looking to get vaccinated this weekend, there's a pop-up clinic happening at the Pedestrian Mall on Saturday. Here's Dr. Janice Fitzgerald with more.
This Saturday, Eastern Health will be hosting a walking COVID-19 vaccine clinic right here in the Pedestrian Mall in downtown St. John's at Scotia Centre.
If you haven't received your first shot or you're eligible for your second, come on down between noon and 6 this Saturday. Our best defense against COVID-19 is getting vaccinated, so please roll up your sleeve and do your part. And after you've gotten your shot, you can enjoy some time with your friends and family in this beautiful outdoor space.
Well, the winds today really playing a role in who's seeing those warm temperatures and some who are seeing the cool temperatures. I'll get into all the details when I come back.
For a look at the weather. And Ashley, you've been talking a lot about all the heat and humidity. We haven't really seen much of that yet. Today was nice and comfortable in our neck of the woods.
Comfortable is definitely one word for it here in St. John's for sure, but it is the winds. It's why we're seeing some warmer temperatures in some areas and not so much in others. Let's take a look at that just to show you. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see the wind barbs there. So we're in a more southeasterly flow for areas to the east as well as all along the north coast, which is why we're seeing those cooler temperatures. And then this southerly flow is bringing all of that warm, moist air with it. So that's headed up towards Labrador, which is why we're seeing those mild temperatures for most of you. And then even the west coast, we're seeing those temperatures as well. This is where you're sitting right now. 16 degrees in St. John's, 17 for Bonavista, 20 for Twillingate. So we're getting a little warmer the further north we go, but temperatures in central, 22 degrees for Gander, 28 still in Corner Brook. Beautiful evening for you. And then those temperatures in Labrador into the mid to high 20s. So we're certainly seeing those warm temperatures and then those humidex values. Now, we are going to start to see those humidex values creep a little bit further east, certainly through the day tomorrow. But those heat warnings right now have expanded towards the west coast, including the Bayvert Peninsula, and then we still have those heat warnings up across Labrador as well. This will happen through Sunday. More than likely going to see those expand towards, say, Gander, Bonavista North area, as well as Terra Nova as we get through the weekend too, because you're going to start to see your temperatures climb. 28 to 30 is what we're going to see as our daytime highs for the most part. And those humidex values, by the time we get to Saturday and Sunday, is when we're going to start to see them the highest values. So the heat will really build through the day on Saturday. Portions of Labrador as well as most of Newfoundland. Again, areas in those onshore flow though may see or will see those cooler temperatures. We'll continue to see that on Sunday, but that's when a cold front will sweep through, so things will get much nicer for you up across Labrador. But it's those dew points. When we start to see those high temperatures and dew points getting into the 17 to 18, that's when things start to get a little bit uncomfortable and eventually oppressive. So we're looking at 20 to 21 with those humidex value, or rather those dew point temperatures, and that is going to lead to those high humidex values. So like I said, anywhere from 36 to 38 by the time we get into Saturday, even into Sunday. And then as that cold front sweeps through, some of that drier air, which means we'll see a relief from that humidity. So for tonight though, still going to stay unsettled for most of the province, certainly up across Labrador. That chance of showers for the west and north, likely partly to mostly cloudy skies for central and eastern areas or southeastern areas of the island, Labrador, until we get into the morning hours. Then you'll see that chance of showers. But the drizzle and fog will continue along the southern portion of the island as well as the west coast with that chance of showers. Temperatures tonight though, absolutely beautiful. Again, you're looking at overnight lows between 14 to 19 degrees, winds not too much, about 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. 21 degrees is your overnight temperature in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, 18 in Cartwright. And as we head through the day tomorrow, it is going to stay unsettled for the most part as we see that drizzle and fog continue along the southern portion of the island. Likely going to see a mix of sun and cloud into the afternoon. Slight chance we could see some showers for the Avalon. The best chance of seeing that will be all along the southern portion of the island. And then that chance of showers again for most of Labrador through the day. And or you're going to see some increase in cloud with showers later on in the day, certainly for the southeast, and eventually some clearing in behind that. So temperatures tomorrow in and around 25 degrees for St. John's. Again, with those humidex values, you're going to see generally cloudy periods, the story through central, but highs into the high 20s. And then as you head towards the west coast, better chance of seeing those showers, at least in the morning hours. Corner Brook should reach 30 degrees again tomorrow. And then temperatures in the 20s for the northern peninsula as well as Labrador. So back into the mid to high 20s with the winds the strongest in Lab City out of the west, about 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. So like I said, more heat in the forecast. Looks a little bit unsettled as well. I'll get into the long range when I come back.
do know that there's still a lot of discriminatory behavior with respect to rental apartments. Those are the sorts of calls that we get at the Human Rights Commission all the time.
No pets, no smoking, no people of color. A local ad is catching a lot of attention after a landlord calls for Caucasian renters only. Well, an ad on Kijiji for a room for rent in St. John's has captured a lot of attention on social media. The ad outlined several restrictions for potential roommates: no smoking, no pets, and must be Caucasian. The ad has since been removed, but the conversation about racial profiling in the rental market has ramped up. Joining me now is Carrie Magid, the Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission, who's at the airport, just about to hop on a plane. So thank you so much for making time for us.
No problem. Happy to do it.
A pretty bold display of racism in that ad, but what does the law say about discrimination in the rental market?
Right. So the Human Rights Act prevents or prohibits discrimination or harassment with respect to rental apartments. And it defines, rental apartments as self-contained dwelling units. So that means You have to have a separate entrance, washroom, kitchen, separate facilities for the apartment. There is an exemption in the Human Rights Act. There's actually many exemptions for various different sections, but this particular one says if you're renting a room in your house where you would share these common facilities, that some sections of the Human Rights Act does not apply to you. However, there's an exemption to the exemption that says that you are not allowed to advertise as such.
So under the law, this person is allowed to choose a roommate based on the color of their skin as long as he doesn't advertise it. That's the illegal part.
Yes, you would be allowed to have, make your own choice as far as your room in your house. Not just like, at university you could rent out specific rooms in a house. That's not what I'm talking about. You as a landlord would be the owner of the house or apartment and just rent out a single room. That's the difference, right?
So is this essentially a loophole in the law that allows a person to discriminate against someone based on race if they're renting a room rather than a separate dwelling?
Yeah, and I guess the philosophy behind it is, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but the philosophy behind it is that if you're renting a room and you're sharing your house with somebody, that you should have, I guess, more ability to choose who you're going to share your house with. Unfortunately, there are negative consequences in these particular cases, because, and in this case, because the person has actually publicly put it out there. You don't see that very often anymore, so I guess that's why it's gotten a lot of coverage on social media and on the news. But we do know that there's still a lot of discriminatory behavior with respect to rental apartments. That's the self-contained rental apartments, because those are the sorts of calls that we get at the Human Rights Commission all the time, whether you're racialized, Indigenous, a single parent with small children, or on social assistance. We hear these types of complaints all the time.
And what kind of stories do you hear from people who call your office?
Well, like I just said, you go and you're looking for an apartment, you phone, you say, okay, I'll show up and, meet you and see the apartment. Then as soon as you show up and you're racialized or Indigenous, the rental is all of a sudden taken. Or you'll phone and you say you have small children and they'll say, sorry, we don't rent to small children. With tenants with small children. The same, I hear this a lot for people who are on social assistance, to insist that somebody not be in receipt of social assistance before you rent to them would be considered probably discriminatory under the Human Rights Act.
This seems like an important conversation to be having to help people understand what is allowed and what isn't allowed.
Well, so that's why, I'm happy to speak to you right now, because it is all about education, right? You don't think that these things happen. We know that they happen. We know that racism and other sorts of discriminatory acts happen in this province. And so the more that we talk about them, the more we hear from people, and also just the public reaction to these sorts of things to say, hey, this is not cool. This is not good. We need to educate landlords and tenants on their respective rights and responsibilities. And people have to have that knowledge that, if they're going to rent an apartment, that they can't be discriminated against because of their race or religion or gender identity or whatever it is, any of the prohibited grounds listed under the Human Rights Act.
So what about consequences? This person broke the law by advertising for Caucasians only. Are there any consequences for that?
Like I said, our process is complaint-based. So somebody who not just was offended by this act, because I know based on social media, there's lots of people that were offended, but, somebody who wanted to rent that room and didn't because they were not Caucasian would have to come and file a formal complaint or talk to our lead facilitator at Community Justice Connect and see if, it fits our jurisdiction to file a human rights complaint.
Okay, well, I hear some announcements there at the airport, so we won't keep you any longer, but really do appreciate your time. Carrie Magid, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Now, CBC did contact the person who posted the ad. He wouldn't do an interview, but responded with this message. The part of my ad that people don't like is must be Caucasian. It is meant to not waste the time of people that I will not rent to. Then he added, people of different race or ethnicity should not mix. So, where does the host website stand on racist ads like that? Well, CBC reached out to Kijiji.ca for comment. Kijiji says it has a policy on discrimination and rules related to housing equality. It says before the website got involved, the public had already flagged the post.
Anytime we see an ad or an ad is flagged to us that is blatantly discriminatory or that goes against existing legislation, human rights, etc., we will of course take action to remove that and, when needed, ban the user. This ad came to our attention because of the community. We had flags, we had written comments and complaints from the community, and as soon as this ad was brought to our attention, we took it down immediately. We sent an educational message to the user. And we're going to closely monitor the situation so that if this person posts an ad again or tries to get around our filters in some way, then we can take action to ban their account.
My hometown, and also the home to the famous song, The Star of Logie Bay.
Yes, and it's quite the tune. Chris Andrews from Shanneyganock will have some of the history behind the Star of Logie Bay after the break. Tonight, we continue with our summer series all about music and place. For weeks, filmmaker Roger Monder and Shanniganuk's Chris Andrews have been taking us to communities across the province to dive into the stories behind some well-known songs. Well, tonight, we head to Logie Bay to learn more about a mysterious traditional tune.
Welcome to Logie Bay, Middle Cove, Outer Cove. 3 in unity form one, my hometown, and also the home to the famous song, The Star of Logie Bay.
Ye ladies and ye gentlemen, I pray you lend an ear, while I locate the residence of a lovely charmer fair. Curling of her yellow locks first stole my heart away, and the place of habitation is down in Logie Bay.
Some of the old photographs and images we have here at the rooms of fishing premises and flakes there are just, they're engineering marvels, how anyone could eke out a living fishing down that way.
The first song I think I heard of the McNulty family singing was The Star of Logie Bay. And it was almost like when it came on, like there was another presence came in the room. It was almost like a national anthem.
Song about a beautiful girl, and it's so descriptive. It's a curious song. I know a colleague of mine, Philip Hiscock, who was a long-time archivist and folklorist at Memorial University, since retired. In 2003, he wrote a really interesting article about the Star of Logie Bay. He said 10 unusual things about the song. So he mentioned things like the disputed authorship of the song. It's been attributed to Mark Walker, and then there's a Kelly family connection. His conclusion is that it was never really solid to say who wrote it, but chances are, given the evidence he puts forward, it can be attributed to Mark Walker. But again, we'll never know. Second thing comes to mind is just some of the curiosities about the song. It has a great rhythm to it, has a great beat to it. It's similar to other songs that Walker wrote. So that's another argument that he would be the author. But one curious thing my dad always liked to point out is the line between Torbay and Outer Cove. And of course, anyone who knows the geography of Logie Bay, Middle Cove, Outer Cove, Torbay would know that that's wrong. Geographically incorrect, I should say. But again, who knows? Maybe a road went a certain way. I mean, we'll never know.
I go back to my father especially, because he was telling me, I asked him one time, I said, Dad, who was the Star of Logie Bay? And Dad answered without a heartbeat. He said, she was a houlihan. And she used to go to her aunt's place in Motion, which was between Torbay and Outer Cove, and she'd spend the summer there. And the story he told, like I said, without a heartbeat or a hesitation, so I always believed it.
Logie Bay has some wonderful things to do, like the Ocean Sciences Centre, the East Coast Trail System, and Redcliffe, that was once an American base.
My daughters asked me, is this true, Daddy? Does this really happen? And I always said, oh yes, because I think the sentiment is universal. It's a song about a beautiful girl, from a beautiful place.
I know in our family, like anytime the Star of Logie Bay was played, there was a reverence about the song. That it just happened naturally. Nobody taught it to you, by a spoken word. But I just know the way, like my own father, my grandfather, when they heard the song, like immediately they just sat a little bit more upright and listened a little bit more closer. And you could always see a sense of pride.
Now to conclude and finish, the truth to you I'll tell. Between Torbay and Outer Cove, 'twas there my love did dwell. The finest girl to grace our isle, so everyone did say. May the heavens above shower down its love on the Star of Logie Bay.
Logie Bay is much a feeling, a sentiment, as it is a real place.
In early June, the U.S. approved a much-debated Alzheimer's drug despite concerns about effectiveness. It's the first new drug for the disease in nearly 2 decades. It's leading to increasing questions here at home about when it could gain approval from Health Canada. But as Christine Barak reports, some scientists are concerned the drug could be raising false expectations.
Ever since this new Alzheimer's drug was approved in the U.S., Canadians with early-stage memory loss have been asking their doctors, is it safe? How can I get my hands on aducanumab? It is not approved by Health Canada, but now leading Canadian experts say it should not be approved, at least not yet, and here's why.
We haven't seen all the evidence supporting it, but it appears that it doesn't make Alzheimer's stop or go away. Doesn't improve people.
In a consensus statement released today by several aging and brain health organizations, they note aducanumab does not meet the accepted criteria for clinical efficacy, safety, and risk-benefit. Marketed as Aduhelm, about a third of trial participants had side effects, including brain bleeds or swelling. But drug maker Biogen says the infusions can clear amyloid plaques in the brain that are commonly found in Alzheimer's patients. But after decades of research, experts aren't sure how much that helps.
There's been an amyloid hypothesis that Alzheimer's was due to amyloid. If we take away the amyloid, the disease would go away, get better, or at least stop. And this does not appear to be the case.
Biogen says high doses of its drug can slow down a patient's decline by roughly a quarter, which means someone may deteriorate over 4 years instead of 3. Doctors say they need to see more evidence, but that patients are eager for a new Alzheimer's drug.
Aducanumab, if it is effective, and that's where a lot of the controversy is, it would represent a glimmer of hope for people living with dementia who've had no hope for almost 18 years.
Hope is exactly what Bob Murray is looking for. He has mild cognitive impairment and he wants to try the drug.
I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of having Alzheimer's, symptoms of Alzheimer's.
Murray says patients who are losing their precious memories and their caregivers need hope. And they also need new approaches for dealing with this deadly disease. Health Canada says aducanumab is still under review. Christine Barak, CBC News, Toronto.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning all across Canada. Firefighting agencies are sharing resources and bringing in help from other parts of the country and around the world. In Manitoba, a crew from South Africa is now making its way to a fire line about 250 kilometers north of Winnipeg. CBC's Austin Grabish reports.
Help from a world away.
We have a fit, young team, very active and very anxious to show what we can do.
A team of over 100 firefighters and support staff arriving in Winnipeg from South Africa to join the fight against 143 wildfires raging across the province.
The exposure to Canada is also an opportunity to see a new firefighting environment.
Thousands have been forced from their homes in several First Nation communities in recent weeks. The province giving a warm welcome to the added boots on the ground.
This is some extra help to help us get a handle on all those fires.
Rain in recent days has helped with some of the firefighting efforts. The Red Cross says residents of 4 First Nations are now cleared to return home. Bloodbane band counselor Ellen Young says community members are thrilled.
Being cooped up in a hotel room for 3 weeks with maybe 6 people in the room, when you have 4 kids, it can be trying.
She says close to 700 people were forced to go to Winnipeg on July 19th with little notice. Young praises bus drivers who quickly got them out and has kudos to the Red Cross for getting hotels.
They have been phenomenal in helping our people.
The whole goal when we do this is to support people as long as they need to be out, but of course we'd rather everybody be back in their own homes.
The South African firefighters will undergo a briefing and health checks Thursday. Crews will then be deployed for 2 weeks. Back in Bloodvein, Young says thankfully the fire didn't ruin any homes, but she says bears got into trouble.
They've wrecked most of the garbage bins. One of them broke into one of the houses, would you believe?
Visitors that won't be welcome when evacuees return home. Austin Grabish, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, the Taliban have seized another key city in Afghanistan as their rapid offensive continues across the country. Now, this is new video released by the Taliban today, claiming to be pictures of the city of Ghazni, about 150 kilometers south of Kabul. It's raising fears that insurgents could take the capital within months. With the last of the U.S.-led international forces withdrawing by the end of this month, the Taliban now controls about 2/3 of the country. The UN says more than 400,000 people have been displaced. It's a creative endeavor staged in a very creative way. Theater lovers in cities like Paris and Rome have been able to show up at a specific site to enjoy an outdoor performance. Participants download an app, listen on headphones, and then get lost in a story that takes place on the streets of the city. And now it's being tried in Windsor, Ontario as well. Take a look.
Track is already set. The audience listens to the track and the actors embody the story. And what's really lovely about it is that you eventually start to feel like you're inside a movie.
I think there's something magical about it. I think, you're having this shared experience with these other audience members. You put the earbuds in and suddenly you're downtown and you're still surrounded by all of the people and the trucks and the buildings, but somehow it's more magical, somehow it's more beautiful, and you're sharing this beautiful experience with all of these other audience members, and it's almost like you're in on a secret.
The play isn't about the pandemic, it isn't about COVID, but it's very much of COVID and of its time, and deals with the deep emotional needs that people have been feeling for so long that we're now beginning to come out of. As a consequence of hearing the dialogue and the thoughts in your own head, it becomes a very intimate experience, and you feel very privileged at the end of it to have listened so intimately and so closely to another person's journey that usually matches something that you've felt yourself for the last 18 months.
The very concept of talking to a stranger, it's something that a lot of us maybe didn't do in the first place, but of those of us who did, it's a skill we've kind of forgotten. And so this show it really has the power to help us remember some of our social skills.
We're just so excited to have something in the downtown core that could bring joy and bring people back to the streets and to the businesses. So I'm just so thankful that people have rallied and brought this piece, and very humbled that we get the chance to do it.
What a neat project. I could totally see that happening on the streets of downtown St. John's.
Absolutely. I was totally just thinking that. That would be awesome here.
Yeah, very cool. Well, time to look ahead to the weekend. How are things looking?
Well, we're going to see the heat and humidity continue for the most part, but it does look like things are going to stay unsettled, which is kind of good news because you don't really want that sun blaring when it's that hot.
Too hot.
A little bit too much, yeah. But let's take a look at the future tracker just to show you what's going to happen. So this is Saturday morning. We're seeing some areas of showers for the southeastern portion of the of Labrador, as well as the northern peninsula, and it looks like most of eastern Newfoundland could see the chance of a few showers early Saturday morning. As we get into the afternoon, we're going to start to watch another area of low pressure move through and an associated cold front. With that, that's when we're going to see some of those temperatures drop across Labrador, at least get rid of some of that humidity through the afternoon. In behind that, and that will work its way towards the west coast of the island as we get into Sunday afternoon, and eventually that's going to sweep through into Monday, and then we'll all of us will be seeing some of that nicer, more comfortable air as we get through the afternoon, and that is in behind that cold front. However, we will see some showers with that cold front as it sweeps through as well. So temperatures on Saturday still looking pretty mild. 31 is what I have, hot. 31 is what I have through parts of central. Corner Brook at 29 at this point on Saturday, and we're going to see that heat and humidity up across Labrador as well. 28 degrees for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and then in behind that we're going to see some of the cooler temperatures. So 18 to 21 for Lab West as well as the north. And then temperatures for the Avalon have you around 24 degrees at this point, and then we're going to see the temperatures in and around there as well on Sunday. We may lose a degree or two, but this does look like we'll see some unsettled conditions, certainly on the west coast, and then as we head towards central and eastern areas, you'll see that better chance of showers later on in the afternoon. Temperatures for Labrador, again, back into the teens for you for the west and the north, and then the humidity will be gone for you for most of the day for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, as well as southeastern Labrador. As we get into Monday, keeping the skies gray at this point, and then things should clear out on Tuesday. Much more comfortable weather as far as those temperatures go. 22 degrees for your Tuesday at this point. Now for central Newfoundland, you're looking at unsettled conditions right through to Monday, clearing out as we get into Tuesday. Looks like a ridge of high pressure should dominate, and temperatures back up into the mid-20s and overnight lows into the teens. And then as far as eastern Labrador goes, after you see that sunshine, or rather cloud cover and rain on Sunday, looks like the sunshine should return on Monday. Temperatures into the low 20s, and then a little bit cooler for Lab West with your temperatures in the teens. I had to share this photo, flat, calm sunset in Carmenville. Claudette shared that great shot with us. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
That is gorgeous.
I love seeing the water that calm.
Yeah, crystal clear. Well, that's it for us. Tomorrow is Friday.
It's already Friday.
This week feels like it just flew by.
It's a good thing.
Which is great. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Hope to see you again tomorrow.
Good night.